Hey guys, Serac here, and today I'm bringing you my budget Ancient Warriors deck build. This is a deck that was released in Ignition Assault and focuses on the Chinese mythology of the Three Kingdoms, which also feature heavily in the Dynasty Warrior games, if you're interested in that. It's a really cool going second deck. It can break so many different boards and has lots of non-linear combo plays that you can really tune to out your opponent's board. Before we get into the profile, if you like my content, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment. It really helps feed YouTube's famous algorithm. So, let's get into the profile. We have 3 copies of Ancient Warriors Masterful Sunmu. Now, Ancient Warriors have gone up a little bit in price recently. This is one of the more expensive, harder to find cards there because it's Ultra from a relatively old set. But this is a really strong card. It allows you to search for any Ancient Warriors by sending your cards from your hand or field to the graveyard, which is relevant when it comes to their spell trap cards. It prevents targeting from attacks, and if an Ancient Warrior's effect activates, you can target a monster your opponent controls and bounce it. So most of them have an effect involving sending a card from hand or field to the graveyard, and then an effect involving another Ancient Warrior's effect activating. So this is one of your most important starters in the deck. We then have 3 copies of Ancient Warriors Virtuous Lucian, and this, again, can't be targeted for attacks if you control another Ancient Warriors monster. And then, if you control more monsters, you can special summon an Ancient Warriors from your deck. If your opponent controls more monsters, you can special summon one from the deck. And then, when an attack's declared involving another Ancient Warriors, you can draw a card. So again, a lot of them have sort of underdog-style effects, which is why this deck functions best going second, because you want your opponent to have monsters on board. And then this one allows you to refill your hand, because obviously you're continually discarding cards, or sending them from the field to the graveyard, and so on. We then have 2 copies of Ancient Warriors Ingenious Kong. Now, this is a free special summon when it's searched. You have loads of ways of searching this from your Ancient Warrior cards, so it's really easy to get a free body on the field. It's wind, which is very important for your Link 2, which is one of the reasons this deck has gone up in price, because the Link 2 is really strong. And it's negate for both spell traps and monsters. And again, it will help activate your Ancient Warrior spell trap cards' graveyard effects. So this is a really strong card. We then have the new card of the deck, another one that's given it a bit more interest recently. This is Rebellious Liu Feng, and this can only be special summoned by controlling the highest attack Ancient Warrior. Now, this is where the fact that the deck is uncommon is really good for you, because you're unlikely to. The only Ancient Warrior that sees play outside of Ancient Warriors generally is the Link 2. And that only has 1100 or 1600 attack if it's on board, because it gives all Ancient Warriors 500 attack. So you're pretty much always going to control the highest attack Ancient Warrior monster. It's a quick effect pop. Unfortunately, you don't get to choose what gets popped, but that helps you in a way because it doesn't target, although it does destroy. And then again, the other effect is if your opponent controls a monster with higher attack, you give control of it to your opponent, which is a really nice lore feature, but less impactful for game. However, it happens in the end phase. You're aiming to win the game their turn. And secondly, it's got 2800 attack. There are few monsters with more than that, Dragoon being one, and you have other ways of outing Dragoon. You're not playing this card into a Dragoon unless you have a way around it. We then have 3 copies of Ancient Warriors Loyal Guanyun. Now, this is an archetypal pancreatops. If your opponent controls a monster, only your opponent controls a monster, so this is another of the benefits going second with this card. Special summon it. They cannot target other Ancient Warriors with card effects, so that's some nice targeting protection for everything. And then, if your opponent controls more monsters, you can target one monster they control, destroy it. Simple as it's not a quick effect, unlike Pancreatops, which is unfortunate, but it doesn't have to tribute itself. So you get both sides. And we are, of course, playing Pancreatops as well, because it's, again, a really, really good card in this deck. Again, it's a wind monster, so you can link it into your Link 2 if you need it. And you have other ways of special summoning it as well if it's not in your opening hand. So the only your opponent controls a monster is less important. We then have 2 copies of Graceful Sugong. Now, Graceful Sugong allows you to trade in your Ancient Warrior spell traps and all your fire formations, because of course we're running fire formation Tenki because they're all beast warriors. And we're running Tensu because the deck can be quite normal summon reliant. And this allows you to trade them in for the ones you need. Once you've searched with your Tenki, you're not gaining much from the 100 attack point boost. So why not trade it in for 3 visits or another one that you can actually utilise the effect of. And similarly, he can also negate any monster effects if an Ancient Warrior effect is activated, which again is very, very useful for baiting out negates or winning negate wars, because a lot of your Ancient Warriors have quick effects, so you can activate it, put this on the chain and stop a negate from there. We then have some one-offs. We have one-off Valiant Sangde. This is your OTK enabler. It gives you lots of attack for each monster your opponent controls. And then if you control 2 Ancient Warriors, you can special summon this card from your hand. So the deck works almost as if you use your underdog effects to build your field and break your opponents, and then you can use cards like this to make the OTK. And then if they control more monsters, it can make 2 attacks. So this is, again, one of the ways you clear the board in the battle phase. And then finally, for Ancient Warriors, we have 1 copy of Ambitious Cowday. This is big, 3000 attack beta. It's really, really easy to summon because, again, so many of your Ancient Warrior cards destroy cards. And it's not restricted to Ancient Warrior cards destroying cards. It can be things like Pancreatops as well. It can't be targeted if you control another Ancient Warriors, and it can't be destroyed, which is very, very useful. And it steals your opponent's monsters. So anything, you can steal Dragoons with this card if it hasn't had an attack boost. And so on. We then have 1 copy of Pancreatops, because it's a 4th copy of Guanyun, but it's a quick effect pop, it's got 100 more attack, and it's easier to summon. We would run more, but it's at 1, so we can't run more. We have 3 copies of Gamciel, the sea turtle kaiju. This is the lowest attack kaiju monster. It outs absolutely everything on board. It gets rid of cards like Dragoon, which, again, is a deck like this Nemesis. We don't like Dragoon in this deck. We have some outs for it, but not a huge number. But it's very, very useful in that it just cleanly outs anything. You can then easily destroy it, beat over it, what have you. And then for the hand traps, we're running the Cyframe package. Because we're running this, because A, it's a really, really good hand trap for going second decks. B, we can, if we have to activate it on our turn before we do anything, we can immediately say they Ash Blossom our Tenki. We can use this, go into Omega, rip a card out of their hand, and then we've got a clear board, so we can still use cards like Guanyun. which is one of the most useful parts of this card. So then for the spells, we have 3 copies of 3 visits. This is your search spell. If you normal or special summon an Ancient Warriors, target 1, add 1 with a different name, and then if it's sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, you can special summon an Ancient Warrior from your hand. So again, you're activating this, summoning your Ancient Warrior, searching 1, using another Ancient Warrior effect's cost to send this to the graveyard, and then special summoning them from your hand. It sends itself to the graveyard, but that's fairly irrelevant, because generally you want to be triggering these yourself. We have 1 copy of East by South Winds. So for a lot of the sagas, we're only running 1 copy because we want to toolbox them. Ideally, we want to be searching the one we need rather than necessarily drawing them. So this you send during the second standby phase. Again, you toss a coin. If you call it correct, you send it to the graveyard. And then if it goes to the graveyard, you can activate it. Your opponent can activate cards or effects in response to activation of any Ancient Warrior cards and effects. So not just monsters, your spells and traps as well. And they all gain the effect when this card declares an attack, destroy 1 card your opponent controls. Again, we're not relying on the coin toss with this. We are using it to... we are activating it when we can send it ourselves to essentially make all our Ancient Warriors ridiculously strong. It destroys cards, not monsters, not face up, and it doesn't target, so that's really, really useful for this deck. We have 1 copy of Ancient Warrior Saga Sunlu Alliance. This is our... it helps enable OTKs, because we give all our Ancient Warriors huge amounts of attack. If we control, say, 3 Ancient Warriors, that's every monster gaining 900 attack for it being sent. And you also get to put your opponent almost under a true King of All Calamities type effect if you control 2 or more different attributes of Ancient Warrior monster, which is very, very easy to do. And it also activates if your opponent special summons a monster, as well as you activating an effect. And this one doesn't have a graveyard effect, but once its effect have both activated, it's just free fodder. It doesn't have to stay on the field for its effects to work. We then finally have 1 copy of Borrowing of Arrows. This allows you to get over opponent's big towers type monsters by halving their attack, and similarly its graveyard effect is far more important because it allows you to tutor any Ancient Warrior spell trap card out of your deck, and it allows you to place it immediately face up on the field, which is relevant with the trap card. We then run 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. A lot of this deck is level 4 or lower Beast Warrior type monsters. It gives you a little attack boost, but that's by the by. The main reason we're running this is for the search, and then it's free fodder to send for our Ancient Warrior effects. Similarly, we have 3 copies of Fire Formation Tensu. Again, it's free. We need extra normal summons if we can get them, because if we miss our special summons or searches, get hand trapped or what have you, we need ways of coming back into the game, being able to make a double Dragon Lords, and so on. So having the extra normal summon is a really, really nice way of ensuring that. We then have 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. This deck hates cards like Mystic Mine. We need to run an out to it because we need to be able to play. And finally, we have 1 Ancient Warrior Saga Defense of Changban. We are mainly summoning this with Borrowing of Arrows. And what it allows us to do is we can prevent attacks, but more importantly, it locks spell and trap cards out of activating during the battle phase, and it also helps us extend during our opponent's turn, if the game goes on that long. So that's the main deck, and now for the extra deck we have 2 copies of Ancient Warrior's Oath Double Dragon Lords. This is a ridiculously strong card. Gives all your monsters 500 attack and defense, which is a huge boost, and that's for free. If it's link summoned, you get to search any Ancient Warriors card, again, not monster, not spell trap, card, anything in your deck, essentially, and you can send 1 card from your hand or field to the graveyard, target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, return it to the hand, and that's a quick effect. So it searches the monster you need or the spell trap you need for the situation, it can send it to the graveyard itself, and it's an interruption if the game goes later or you're forced to go first. We have 1 copy of TriBrigade Ferrijit the Barren Blossom. This allows us to, again, extend from our hand if we need to, and our entire deck is Beast Warrior, so the drawback doesn't matter, and it also allows us to sculpt our hand, put, say, the trap card back in our deck if it leaves the field, or the driver back in our deck if we need to. 1 Firefighting Daruma Doll. This just helps us with destroying back row, and again helps us with a little bit of recursion if we need it. The extra deck is not the most important aspect of this deck. The main card you're going to be using is Double Dragon Lords. 1 Heater the Fire Charmer. We can make this because we control lots of fire monsters, and Ash Blossom is a fire monster, so being able to steal an Ash Blossom from your opponent's graveyard just helps us make for extra link material or what have you is very, very useful. 1 Nightmare Phoenix. Have I mentioned this deck really doesn't like back row? 1 Nightmare Unicorn, because things are often immune to destruction, so we need to make Unicorn instead. 1 Boral Sword Dragon, because sometimes we don't have enough damage to OTK with what we've got on board, even with all the attack boosts and attack modulation we can do. So that's the link package of the deck. Now for the Xyz part, we have 1 Tiger King. This is a sort of Dark Ruler No More type effect, which is very, very useful. And it can also fetch Beast Warriors from the deck. Although we're unlikely to ever control 3 fire formation cards, if it is happening, if it does ever happen, then great, we get a free rank 4 out of it. But this is mainly there for the fire formation search, which, again, it's a free copy of Tanki, and it can place a Dark Ruler No More on the field. This is one of the ways we have of outing Dragoon. One Light Dragon Agnista. Non-targeting destruction is good. 1 Drill Driver Vespinato. Sometimes we just need a little bit more attack. Most of our rank 4s have under 2500 attack, so if we need to push for damage or run over a Dryden with no materials or something like that, then this will help. Then we have 1 Utopia. This is here just to summon 1 copy of Utopia the Lightning. I originally put Utopia double in this deck, but that's quite an expensive card, and I wanted to keep this deck as low in cost as possible, which is a shame because a lot of the Ancient Warrior cards have gone up in price a little bit recently. But this, again, is another way of outing big towers-type monsters. It puts itself to 5k attack and prevents your opponent from activating any cards or effect until the end of the damage step. We have 1 Dingysu. We can make rank 8s. Again, we're not making this very often, but you'll be glad you have it in your extra deck when you need to out a specific card. And it also helps protect your other monsters. And then finally, we run the 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Omega. So that's the deck. It's a very, very different deck to a lot of other things. It plays very, very differently. It doesn't have sort of standard lines. You're very much reacting to what your opponent's made in front of you and figuring out how best to crack that. It's very much more of a puzzle. You have all the tools in your deck, and you've got to work out how to get from A to B to be able to end the game. But I hope you enjoyed that deck profile, and I will see you again soon.